Dhanavat Pranam. Namaste. All glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 7, Text 50. Nakula Sahadevascha Yuyudhano Dhananjaya Bhagavan Devaki Putro Yechanyeyascha Yoshita. Nakula and Sahadev, the younger brothers of the king, also Satyaki, Arjuna, the personality of Godhead Lord Sri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies, and others, all unanimously agreed with the king. Text 51. Tata Nabhartur Natmanas Charte Yohan Suptan Sishunvrata. Bhima, however, angrily disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit, who had murdered sleeping children for no purpose and for neither his nor his master's interest. 52. Nishamya Bhima Gaditam Draupadyascha Chatsaniva. Chaturbhuja, the four-armed one, or the personality of Godhead, after hearing the words of Bhima, Draupadi, and others, saw the face of his dear friend Arjuna, and he began to speak as if smiling. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna had 2 arms, and why he is designated as four-armed is explained by Sridhar Swami. Both Bhima and Draupadi held opposite views about killing. We can imagine Bhima ready to kill while Draupadi is obstructing him. And in order to prevent both of them, the Lord discovered another 2 arms. Originally, the primeval Lord Sri Krishna displays only 2 arms, but in his Narayana feature he exhibits 4. In his Narayana feature he resides with his devotees in the Vaikuntha planets, while in his original Sri Krishna feature he resides in the Krishna Loka planet, far, far above the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. Therefore, if Sri Krishna is called Chaturbhuja, there is no contradiction. If need be, he can display hundreds of arms, as he exhibited in his Vishvarup shown to Arjuna. Therefore, one who can display hundreds and thousands of arms can also manifest 4 whenever needed. When Arjuna was perplexed about what to do with Asvatthama, Lord Sri Krishna, as a very dear friend of Arjuna, voluntarily took up the matter just to make a solution, and he was smiling also. 53 through 54. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Brahma Bandhur Nahatavya Atatyai Vadhapahyanu Shashanam Kuru Pratishrutam Satyam Yatat Santvat Yata Priyam Chabhima Senasya Panchalya Mayam Evacha. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna said, "A friend of a Brahmana is not to be killed, but if he is an aggressor, he must be killed. All these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. You should have to fulfill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimasena and me." Purport. Arjuna was perplexed because Asvatthama was to be killed as well as spared, according to different scriptures cited by different persons. As a Brahma Bandhu, or a worthless son of a Brahmana, Asvatthama was not to be killed, but he was at the same time an aggressor also. And according to the rulings of Manu, an aggressor, even though he be a Brahmana, and what to speak of an unworthy son of a Brahmana, is to be killed. Dronacharya was certainly a Brahmana, in the true sense of the term, but because he stood in the battlefield, he was killed. But although Asvatthama was an aggressor, he stood without any fighting weapons. The ruling is that an aggressor, when he is without weapon or chariot, cannot be killed. All these were certainly perplexities. Besides that, Arjuna had to keep the promise he had made before to Draupadi, just to pacify her, and he also had to satisfy both Bhima and Krishna, who advised killing him. This dilemma was present before Arjuna, and the solution was awarded by Krishna. 55. Sutta uvacha Arjuna sahasaghyaya harer hadam atasina manim hadam dvisaha mordajam. Sutta Goswami said, just then Arjuna could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders, and thus with his sword he severed both hair and jewel from the head of Asvatthama. Purport. Contradictory orders of different persons are impossible to carry out. Therefore, a compromise was selected by Arjuna by his sharp intelligence, and he separated the jewel from the head of Asvatthama. This was as good as cutting off his head, and yet his life was saved for all practical purposes. Here, Asvatthama is indicated as twice born. Certainly he was born, he failed, and therefore he was properly punished. 56. Vimucharasana badham balahatya hata prabham tejasamani nahinam sibira nirayapayat. He, Asvatthama, had already lost his bodily luster due to infanticide, and now, moreover, having lost the jewel from his head, he lost even more strength. Thus he was unbound and driven out of the camp, not killed, by the intelligence of Lord Krishna and Arjuna. 57. Vapanam dravinhadanam stanan niryapanam tata isahi brahma bandhunam vadho nanyosti daihika. Cutting the hair from his head, depriving him of his wealth, and driving him from his residence are the prescribed punishments for the relative of a Brahmana. There is no injunction for killing the body. 58. Putraso katura sarve pandava saha krishnaya svanam ritanam yatkrityam chakrur nirharanam dikam. Thereafter the sons of Pandu and Draupadi, overwhelmed with grief, performed the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives. Purport. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 7th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled The Son of Droṇa Punished. Chapter 8. Prayers by Queen Kunti and Parikshit saved. Text 1. Sutta uvacha atate samparetanam svanam udhakam ichhatam datum sa Krishna gangayam puraskrityaya yustriya. Sutta Goswami said, thereafter the Pandavas, desiring to deliver water to the dead relatives, purport. To date, it is custom in Hindu society to go to the Ganges or any other sacred river to take bath when death occurs in the family. Each of the family members pours out a pot full of the Ganges water for the departed soul and walks in a procession with the ladies in the front. The Pandavas also followed the rules more than 5,000 years ago. Lord Krishna, being a cousin of the Pandavas, was also amongst the family members. Text 2. Teninyodakam sarve vilapya cha brishampuna apluta hari padabja rajaputa sarijale. Having lamented over them and sufficiently offered Ganges water, they bathed in the Ganges, whose water is sanctified due to being mixed with the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. Text 3. Tatrashinam kuru patim dhritarastam krishnam cha madhava. There sat the king of the Kurus, Maharaj Yudhisthira, along with his younger brothers, and Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti, and Draupadi, all overwhelmed with grief. Lord Krishna was also there. Purport. The Battle of Kurukshetra was fought between family members, and thus all affected persons were also family members, like Maharaj Yudhisthira and brothers Kunti, Draupadi, Subhadra, Dhritarashtra, got in some way or other related with each other, and therefore the family grief was combined. Lord Krishna was also one of them as a cousin of the Pandavas and nephew of Kunti, as well as brother of Subhadra, etc. The Lord therefore was equally sympathetic toward all of them, and therefore he began to pacify them befittingly. Text 4. Santvayam asa munibir hata bandhun sucharpitan bhuteshu kalasya gatim darshaya na pratikriyam beings. Lord Sri Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. Purport. The stringent laws of nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be altered by any living entity. The living entities are eternally under the subjugation of the Almighty Lord. The Lord makes all the laws and orders, and these laws and orders are generally called dharma or religion. No one can create any religious formula. Bona fide religion is to obey. Everyone should follow him only, or his orders, and that will make all happy, both materially and spiritually. As long as we are in the material world, our duty is to follow the orders of the Lord, and if by the grace of the Lord we are liberated from the clutches of the material world, then in our liberated stage also we can render transcendental loving service unto the Lord. In our material stage we can see neither ourselves nor the Lord for want of spiritual vision. But when we are liberated from material affection and are situated in, we can see both ourselves and the Lord face to face. Mukti means to be Mukti means to be reinstated in one's original spiritual status after giving up the material conception of life. Therefore, human life is specifically meant for qualifying ourselves for this spiritual liberty. Unfortunately, under the influence of illusory material energy, we accept this spot life of only a few years as our permanent existence, and thus become illusioned by possessing so-called country, home, land, children, wife, community, wealth, etc., which are false representations created by Maya, illusion, and under those possessions. By cultivating spiritual knowledge, we can realize that we have nothing to do with all this material paraphernalia. Then at once we become free from material attachment. This clearance of the misgivings of material existence at once takes place by association with the Lord's devotees, who are able to inject the transcendental sound into the depths of the bewildered heart, and thus make one practically liberated from all lamentation and illusion. That is a summary of the pacifying measures for those who are insoluble factors of material existence. The victims of war, namely the family members of the Kurus, were lamenting the problems of death, and the Lord pacified them on the basis of knowledge. Thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 5 on Wednesday. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmala Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Arupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Eka Chakra Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Nishingapali Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Subhadra, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai. All glories to Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kun Radha Kun Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Hari Hari Bol. Hare